Welcome to Hiking Gear Unveiled Episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about outer layers and how they help provide you with protection from the elements. Rain, snow, wind. They're also going to help keep you warm in those cold conditions. This category can be a lot of fun when it comes to picking out that awesome looking down jacket, but it can also be overwhelming if you're trying to find the right material for your specific adventure. Stick around. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing the most affordable and effective piece of outerwear I own.
What could it be?
I mean, under 20 bucks. Let's jump right into everybody's favorite, the puffer.
Let's get started.
So there's a couple things to think about with the puffer that you may or may not know. You can look for style only, but the most important thing you're going to want to think about is the materials that provide the insulation. So the main ones we're going to talk about are down, synthetic down, and then they're also starting to blend down in synthetic down. I'm going to take the mystery out. Here's the deal. Down is the lightest weight, and it's also going to provide the most optimal warmth to weight ratio. It's been used for years and years, and for a good reason. It does have its drawbacks. And it's mainly just one. If down gets wet, it is no good. It's going to provide zero warmth. You're going to be miserable. In fact, you're going to get cold. That's where synthetic down comes in. Synthetic down is going to provide a really good weight to warmth ratio, and it's fractionally not as good as down. That said, it provides you with that protection from wetness. Synthetics that they're using now can get completely wet. In tests, synthetic down has been completely submerged and soaked in water, and it's still providing insulation value, which is amazing. So I wouldn't recommend taking your synthetic down and getting it soaking wet, but it's phenomenal that it will still provide you warmth. Where down, it shrinks up and it just doesn't have that insulation provided at all. It just gets squished up and matted down, and that's where the insulation comes from. With the synthetics, they still retain their loft, and they're still going to provide that protection. For me, the newest jacket that I got from Outdoor Vitals, a brand you've heard me talk about a little bit, is a combination of the two. They've used a synthetic down and a down. That way you get that ultimate weight reduction and maximal warmth, but you still have that protection from having a slightly wet jacket for whatever reason. I really think it's a good way to go. I've been wearing a down jacket only, and to be honest with you, I never had wet issues because when it was snowing, I put on a rain jacket, it didn't get wet. I have felt the loft go down slightly just through perspiration and things like that. I never got to the point where it was making me cold, but this is definitely a real thing that can happen to you. So those are the materials and those are the things to consider. All of them are valid. Down is not the best. Synthetic down is not the best. Blends are not the best. You got to figure out what works for you. Sometimes this is situational. Sometimes this is the ability to only have one jacket and you need the versatility. Now that I've covered all the things about the materials, which is, I think, the most important part of a good puffer, let's talk about some of the features that are definitely going to make a difference and help you look at jackets and immediately be like, oh, these are things I'm interested in. These are things that I'm not sure I'm interested in. At least you'll have some inkling into what's out there, and you can make better decisions for your own personal needs.
You got so many options, man.
I'm going to use this jacket as an example because it has quite a few of those features. One I've talked about in prior videos is thumb holes. A weird thing, some people don't care. I love them. It just keeps a jacket in place.
He says that a lot.
I would say the biggest thing about thumb holes for me,
What about them?
is if I'm wearing gloves, which is highly probable if it's cold enough for me to be wearing a puffer, it just goes over the gloves and creates that seal. So I have no wind getting in between the two. I hate the feeling of like a crumpled sleeve pushing up against the down portion of a glove. It's just awkward and weird. And like I have this one cold spot, and is it making me cold? No, but I can feel it. Super annoying. Thumb holes for the win, guys. Thumb holes for the win.
Wow.
I am a fan of a reasonable amount of pockets on puffers. I have plenty of room to stash stuff, and oftentimes the puffer I'm wearing when I am not actually hiking. That's rare for me. I know those things will come up. That's just because I haven't been on a very cold trip, which I hope to go on. But if you're in more moderate temperatures, I don't have it on a whole lot in order to stay warm, but I am wearing it when I get to camp because when I'm not moving, it's cold enough. And also in the mornings when it's still chilly out and we're breaking down camp and getting breakfast, I'm definitely cold without a puffer. So having pockets is nice. I can stash a little bit of gear in here before I walk from point A to point B. I can keep my hands in my pockets. Just comes in handy for sure. Okay, so another feature on a puffer that is personal preference is hood or no hood. You get a little bit of added weight, but you also get a little bit of versatility. And for me, again, with a bald head, I like things with hoods. A, for keeping me warm, keeping me cool, keeping the sun off me. Basically, hoods are a big deal for me. But in general, if you kind of run cold or you've had experiences where your head is constantly the issue, hoods are going to be helpful. I like the versatility of it because obviously you can have it on or off. It's not do or die. It's always there if I need it, and if I don't, it's out of the way. This particular one has a drawstring on the back, elastic with a little stopper, so you can kind of get a good cinch up around the neck and cut out the drafts. Not a killer feature, but definitely nice, and it adds very little weight. So I thought that was really cool on this particular jacket. It also has cinches on the side here, so it's going to really give you the ability to like dial in that fit without being uncomfortable. Other than that, as far as features, there's not a whole lot more to talk about. A lot of these jackets you're going to find internal pockets, which this one has, and really that internal pocket is handy because it's an extra pocket that is inside. So when I don't wear my gloves, I don't wear them in the outside pockets because I'm always afraid, like if I don't zip it up, I might fall out, maybe a little paranoid. But here on the inside, they actually just like stay warmer. If they're a little bit moist, they're gonna dry out easier, and they have like zero chance of falling out. So I always stash, like if I take my beanie off or my gloves off, they go right there. So also, as we talk about, layers come on and off all the time. It's just accessible. I can get them in, I can get them out. I'm never gonna lose them. Oh, where did I put my gloves? They're always in the same place in that pocket. The other thing about internal pockets is generally you can fold your jacket inside out and it'll all fit into that internal pocket. Something I didn't mention about the materials, down, synthetic, and blends, is they're all extremely compact. You look at this jacket and it's, you know, footprint is kind of big and it puffs up. But when you squish this thing down, it's gonna be smaller than a softball.
That's amazing.
Last feature I wanna talk about, which I think is ultra deluxe, there's one drawback that's worth thinking about, but I went ahead and got it, and that's pit zips. So zippers in your pits.
Buddy, your pits.
Oftentimes I'm cool enough where I need a puffer on, but like I'm creating enough warmth and it's trapping enough warmth that I just need a little breathability without like sacrificing a ton of heat. So with my arms being down, I can have that zipper undone and it just adds a little bit of airflow, a little bit of breathability, but I'm not getting cold because my arms are kind of in the way. It's like this intermediate like way of regulating a little temperature. I love it, and I think it's a feature worth looking at. I mentioned it has a drawback. Depending on the zipper design and the company that's making it, you might want to try this on and like move your arms like more than a few times and see if it's rubbing on you. Generally, on my particular jacket, when I tried it, it was zero issue because the material between underneath it was enough for it to have very little friction, and like I can't see it causing any rubbing issues. But I did want to mention that because I've had a couple of experiences where I've read about guys wearing these, and it wasn't this particular jacket, but they did get a lot of rubbing. A lot of that I think has to do with where they start and stop the zipper and kind of the placement of it. Just something to keep in mind, guys.
Let's move on.
All right, now we need to talk about rain gear. So your shell layers, tops and bottoms. Okay, so let's start with the bottom. Rain gear can get pretty specific. Full zip or partial zip on your pants. Zippers are heavy. You want to save weight wherever you can. So depending on your personal preference, you're gonna have to decide on that one. This was a tough one for me. I didn't know which way to go. I ended up going full zip. So far, I've been really happy with the decision. Full zip allows me the versatility, and that's the reason I went with it. That versatility is A, they're easier to get on and off, but more importantly for me, they're kind of adjustable. Sometimes it's just like barely sprinkling enough to have on that layer, but I can still zip partially down the leg, and it's gonna allow me a little bit of ventilation so I'm not getting overly hot. I use my rain pants on most trips as my last way to keep my legs nice and warm. They trap so much heat. I haven't had to wear any sort of like insulated pants and things like that. Those things definitely come into play in lower temperatures than I've been in, but I've been down into, Matt, I think we had a night of just under freezing one of the nights in Colorado, and woke up the next morning. It was definitely close to 32, and I had these on with my bottoms and everything, and I was just fine. So I don't know the exact temperature that you'll feel cold, but these are definitely reliable in the way of trapping a ton of heat. Another thing with rain gear that you're going to want to think about is breathability. Trapping that heat also means that moisture has nowhere to go. So if you don't have good breathability in your rain gear, that moisture, you're going to get wet underneath. Let's just say it how it is. Dripping wet. Matt had an experience with this when we were in Maine, where he had his rain pants on and he was just kind of going and just didn't quite think about how much heat was getting trapped in there. And he's like, man, I feel hot. I'm going to take these things off. It was no do or die type situation, but when he took them off, the lining of them was like dripping wet. And he then realized, oh, I feel so much better now. Like I didn't need quite that much warmth. It just like kind of felt right until I had them off, and then it did not. So definitely something to keep in mind. Back to my point of versatility, that's something I like about the full zip. I'm willing to take that extra weight because it adds tons of ventilation while kind of trapping just the right amount of heat that you want. Okay, your price point on rain gear is wild. You can go from lower cost, medium cost, ridiculously expensive rain gear, and it's like paper thin type stuff, and you're like, why?
Oh, why?
One is, the best rain gear out there is going to have maximum breathability compared to its ability to repel water. So in the mid-range, lower range cost, you're generally, not always, generally going to see that lesser breathability. And that's going to become a problem real quick, because if it's raining, you can't just take it off. You got to actually have the protection. But if it's not breathing, you're going to get really wet under there. So you might as well not have rain gear on. So that's kind of where you play that fine line of cost in these. Is generally the more you pay, the better breathability you get and the better repelling action that they have. Let's talk a little bit about jackets. There's not a whole lot here. I will say on rain layers on the top, I really try to avoid any extra pockets and things like that because they're just potential leak points. I do on this particular jacket have one breast pocket, but it is a waterproof style zipper. It gives me a little bit of storage, but that's it. Nothing on the side where your hands will go. That's sealed up just because it's gonna give you the rain protection you need. So a little bit of like keeping in mind, if you see a rain jacket and it's got like pockets here, 2 breast pockets, a full zip, it's like, well, like how much water can it actually keep out with all these holes in it?
How many holes do you have?
Nothing wrong with having a pocket or 2 on your rain jacket, but something you might want to think about. You're normally not going to see that on your higher end stuff because they've thought about those kinds of things. These layers are really thin, so there's not like a thickness insulation value to them. They're almost like paper thin. They're susceptible to snags. If you fall and trip and it wasn't anything major, barely anything at all, you can get a rip pretty easily on these. So you want to make sure that you're doing your best to take care of your rain gear, at least keep it in mind. On this one, hoods are paramount. You want to be able to keep your head dry. So make sure you have a hood on your rain gear. I guess you could potentially go without one if you had a waterproof hat or something like that, but it just seems logical that they need to have it. Also, some sort of cinching mechanism around there so you can dial in that taper around your face to where it's comfortable yet still like keeping it off you. This particular jacket is Stellar equipment. It has a little bit of a duckbill on the front here, so it's got just a little bit like coming out from your face. That's going to keep anything up. We'll keep a little bit less from coming right into your face. It's just a nice little like cocooning type effect right around the face. I really like it. A little bit of elastic around the sleeves is always good. The last thing I want to talk about with outer layers, shell layers, and even your puffer, potentially need to upsize here. Go a size bigger than you normally would. The reason being is you're obviously wearing multiple layers underneath it.
What is it?
I can't put my arms out.
Some brands are a little bit bigger than others. You know how that game goes. So make sure you try these on. Make sure they're still good fitting, so you're not going to have chafing or annoying like wearing a giant coat, but that they're sized appropriately to make sure you can have something other underneath them. I told you a little bit about a specific piece of gear at the beginning of this video, and it's a sub $20 piece of gear.
Inconceivable.
that is really, really good, especially if you're starting to begin your kit. I'm gonna bring it out. I use these for years and I love them. It is the Frog Tog Ultra Light. I believe they have like Frog Tog Ultra Light 2. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what's different about it from the earlier version, but the reason I bring this up, cost effective. You can get a rip in these, you can kind of wear them out, and you can replace them for under $20. You can buy 5 sets of these before you can get just a jacket of a pretty reasonable brand. So the cost effectiveness is crazy good. Also, something to talk about with Frog Togs. They are elite at keeping water off of you. They are very repellent. They are also extremely breathable, which makes them, a lot of guys on trail love these things, and for a good reason. You're probably wondering the same thing I was wondering. Why would anybody not have Frog Togs? Why is this not the only thing you're showing me and the video's over? These things will rip if you look at them wrong. That said, I've worn them and I just made sure I was cognizant, took good effort not to scrape up against trees and things like that, and didn't have any problems with it. They are highly effective and they are a really good option. Definitely have a lot of kit to put together if you go on a trip. You got those base layers, you got those mid layers, you got your footwear, you got your outerwear, and it's like, man, I can't get this all at once, but I want to go on a trip. Well, this is a way you can kind of save a little bit of money, still get a really effective piece of gear if you're cognizant of its limitation and the fact that it's delicate, and have a world-class protection from rain with ultra breathability. Really a great piece of gear. I got new rain gear when I upgraded to my bottoms and my tops, and to be honest with you, like I can't throw these away. I'm gonna hold on to them. I'll probably use them again at some point. Pretty great piece of gear. I'm really happy to be able to share that with y'all. If any of you have any specific pieces of gear that you use or thoughts on anything I talked about, put in the comments down below. We're gonna list these items in the description so you can kind of go take a look at them and be like, hey, you talked a lot about that coat, but I don't even know what specific model it was. That's where that information is gonna be. Guys, don't forget, if you like the video, hit that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. This was episode 3. We got episode 4 coming out, so make sure you hit that notification button. It's gonna let you know when the videos drop. You can keep up to date. And as always, keep adventuring.